Welcome back to the AAA MF YouTube channel. In my last video, I did a full review of this beautiful McLaren 600LT. But if you've got £225,000 to spend, you could also get some very tasty supercars. What could you get? Well, you could get a Lamborghini Performante Coupe, or you could get a Ferrari 488 GTB. This car has a very similar engine to the McLaren. It has a 3.9 litre V8 twin turbo. How does it sound? Not bad for a twin turbo. However, how does the V10 naturally aspirated Lambo sound? Okay, so I thought it'd be interesting to drive these three back to back and give you some idea of what it's like and how they all compare. Let's have a look. So, this is the Lambo. Should we take this one out? You jump in the passenger seat. Here we go. So we are in the Performante Coupe. Now this has the race seats, which are much firmer than the comfort seats, but they look much better. They've got lovely carbon. So I've got one of these. So I'm used to driving this car. It's done 5,800 miles, this one. So it's well used. We're going to start off in Corsa mode. The brakes feel so much better than the McLaren 600LT, and they just stop. Did you notice that, Dan?
It was sharp.
Much sharper, right? So, let's see how this feels. Now, I know people are going to say, oh, he's biased because he's got one. But remember, I paid my money to buy this car. I bought the car, I'd driven it a few times, but I tell you what, when you hear that noise, it's so intoxicating. And listen to it going down into third, second, first. It crackles, it pops. One of the best engines in the world, in my opinion. People are going to say, the V12's better. Maybe it is. I love the look of this car. I think it looks phenomenal. This one's white with a matte PPF on it. My friend Kane, we used this car in a previous video I've done with my Spider. The steering is better than the 600LT. It's more direct. And I like the steering in the 600LT. It was really good. It's better than the 570S, and the steering is probably better than the 650S. But this is better, much more direct. And this is four-wheel drive, this car as well. What's wrong with this car? These seats are horrendous. They do hug you, they do hug you. But I've driven one of these before with the race seats, and the race seats after 20 minutes really hurt. But I guess if it's just a track car that you've got this for, the race seats are fine. Suspension is a little hard, but then the 600LT has a firm setup as well. But I would say the suspension in the 600LT is a little bit more forgiving, a little bit more compliant than this. Again, McLaren Super Series is the one to go for if you want the great suspension. I tell you, the only downside to this car is you can't really hear the engine as well as with the roof off. When you got the roof down, this car sounds even better. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Now, let's have a look at the alternative from Ferrari, the 488. Now, I know people are going to say that the real comparison is a 488 Pista. However, the 488 Pista isn't out in the UK yet. Well, but there's one or two cars, but there's no way I could get my hands on one. And I think the price point is completely different. I'm not sure what a 488 Pista is secondhand, but it's going to be a lot more than a 600LT at 225,000. Let's try the Ferrari. Wow, 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 wow. This Ferrari is going to have to be pretty good to beat the Lamborghini. Here we go. Look at this. Woo! Isn't that beautiful? Lovely, lovely interior. So we're in the Ferrari 488. This interior is exquisite. We like the start-stop button. Have you noticed he's left it in race? Let's put it into sport. Right, so we're in the Ferrari 488 GTB. Lovely, lovely interior. The carbon steering wheel is phenomenal to hold. Really nice. You've got the lights that come up when you accelerate, Schumacher style. Feels a lot softer, this car, initially. Feels very nice on the road, feels very compliant on the road. Now the owner says he likes driving it in race mode. I'm not going to put it into race mode yet. There's something special about driving a Ferrari. It feels more special than either of the other cars, actually. The Lamborghini feels very engaging and sounds really loud, but somehow this feels more expensive. I hate to say it, but it does. It feels more expensive. You get that lovely burble from the V8. You don't get that in the McLaren. And we're in sport mode now, so we're still going to go into race mode soon. It feels a little bit wider than the other two cars, I have to say. It may not be, but it feels wider. You can see the front of the arches when you're driving, and maybe that gives the impression that the car's actually wider than it is. And it's really nice to see in the mirror that lovely air scoop. Now we're at idle now in sport mode, and you can't even hear the engine. It sounds like an electric engine. Let's try it in race mode. Come on, race mode, here we go. Let's see how much difference this makes. Still not very loud. The brakes are very spongy. What's wrong with the brakes? They don't feel great. Let's try it again. No, those brakes are not great. We can ask the owner about that. The Lamborghini brakes are the best by far so far. Now I know a lot of the people are going to say for £220,000 that you would want to get a Porsche GT3 RS or a 911 Turbo. I actually would prefer a GT3 to this. This just isn't involving enough for me. I prefer a car that's a little bit louder. I prefer a car with more direct steering. And I think the Lamborghini has better steering than this. But I do think this probably looks the classiest. I mean, there's no doubting a Ferrari is a Ferrari. You know, McLarens have pumped out loads and loads of cars, and you can buy a 12C now for £80,000. I think that the Ferrari is more of a GT car after driving it now, and I think that the real competition for the MCLAREN 600LT and the Performante Coupe is probably the Ferrari 488 Pista. So, whilst this is a nice car, this isn't a track-focused variant from Ferrari, and so I think it's probably a little bit of unfair comparison to bring this along. But I think when you're comparing the McLaren and the Lambo, they're both track focused. The Performante is obviously the track version of the Huracan, and the 600LT is the track version of the 570S. So I've just jumped out the Ferrari, and immediately this feels more engaging to drive. It feels much more of a race car. You know, the one thing they've done with this car over the 570 is they've made it feel much more engaging. You can tell immediately from the noise of the engine to the steering. It's completely different to the 570. This car is wonderful. Feels very well built as well. I know that lots of mechanical issues happen with McLarens, partly to do with the fact that they're hand-built, partly to do with the fact that they're so ahead of their time, and probably to do with the fact that they pump out so many cars. But when they work, they are phenomenal. So I think comparing this to the Lamborghini, the sound is just doesn't compare. It doesn't feel as engaging. steering doesn't feel as sharp. McLaren have done a really good job with the 600LT. You know, it feels much more engaging than the Ferrari. It feels very different to the HURACAN Performante. I think that the testimony to how good this car is shown by the fact that actually we think you'd need a 488 Pista to compare it to. That's saying something for McLaren, a company that really only started producing road cars in 2011. Within 7 years, have made something that rivals the best from Ferrari. That's a pretty great achievement. Supercars have really come on a long way. None of these cars are bad cars. They're all great cars. And what's interesting is they're all very different. They've all got very different characteristics. The McLaren is a track car, but it's actually good as a road car as well. The Lamborghini is a naturally aspirated engine, so very different from the Ferrari and the McLaren, and it sounds incredible. The Ferrari, I think, is the gentleman's car, more of a GT car, a phenomenal looking car, and if you want a Ferrari, it's a great car. Me personally, I'd like a Pista. Please can someone lend me one? I think to conclude, if I had to buy one of these, I'd probably get the Performante, then I'd get the McLaren, then I'd get the Ferrari. But I'm very interested to see what Ferrari do with the Pista. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Leave comments below. We'll see you soon.